What is like the real biggest thing that people struggle with?
Most people can go online, do some research, make a really good one-off decision financially. Like almost everybody can use Google, ChatGPT, CNBC, Market Watch, whatever. Make a good decision, do your research on taxes, investments, anything. What people struggle to do is know, how do I take these 10 micro decisions I've made in my finances? How do I get these working together as a cohesive unit with perspective on where I'm going?
Welcome to the Perreira Show, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, creators, and high performers about the intersection of mental health and well-being and business and performance. And this week, I had on Mando Sallavanti III. Mando is a financial planner that I actually met through LinkedIn. And I really enjoyed his story today, talking about how he uses death as a motivator, how he ties back his work ethic to his time as a 10-year-old football player just trying to make weight, and his shift from focusing on external success and putting milestones out into the future, his well-being out into the future based on the milestones he does or does not hit, and instead focuses on being excellent moment to moment. Hope you enjoy the episode. And how's the day going?
Things are good, man. Really busy in that feeling / mode lately, just because in my summers, I take a lot of time off, but to compensate for it, I'll just crunch weeks into days, literally. So like July, I worked 16 days out of the whole month. So I had like 15 days off technically, but I had my same number of like average calls with clients and stuff like that. So you can imagine it's like, I'll have days that are just a sprint. Like today's a sprint, but hey, it is what it is. And that's why I kind of run my business and have my business, right? Like I want to have that sprint so then I could go to the other extreme sometimes. So
yeah, man. It's, I don't know. It's such an amazing challenge to have. It's not even a problem, right? It's like, all right, how can I be like, what is the challenge I want? What is the problem, I guess, that I want? You know, is it, some days I got to fucking sprint. That's how I feel like I'll get these, if there's been a part of the business I've been trying to figure out, right? Maybe I'll just use a simple example, like creating a new program, right? Or a new course, if you will. And, lacking clarity around it, not sure. And then like the second that I get an idea or I get clarity on it, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is all I'm going to work on. This is all I'm going to think about and work on for the next, literally until it's done. It could be 15 days in a row of working full days. And it's like, I don't know why I do this to myself, but at the same time, I know exactly why, because this combination, and I don't know, I'm like, it just fires me up to be able to do that. And then also to be able to stop working at noon one day and go lay at the pool for a few hours.
That's what it is for me, because I know my personality. I have a very addictive personality, which I fortunately in my life, I've learned to channel it for much more good than bad. But because I have an addictive personality, it's like if I'm working, I almost want to be working literally the entire day until I go to bed. But if I'm not working, I kind of want to just do zero that day. Like that's kind of the way I am, for better or worse. And I've tried to change things, but the more time's gone on, I'm just like, you know what, man, why fight the way I naturally like to do things and just let it be?
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel that way too. Probably not to that extreme, but at least from the like addictive personality standpoint. And I think when you start to gain control of that a little bit, when you start to just grab the reins in that and you can guide it and you can steer it in ways that is more, just more in alignment with how you want to live and how you want to show up, because we all have our own tendencies. Right. And our own way of showing up. So awesome. I think that's a good segue. We can jump in. I would love to start first and foremost. Let me just share this just to hit a pause. The whole point and purpose of doing this show is to have people on that are, they could be founders, they could be entrepreneurs, performing at a high level. But really what I see is people that have taken a very intentional approach to life. Right. And are not absent or are not void of challenges, of struggles, of having hurdles, of going through really tough times in life, but instead, like, and not in like when we, when you use those or when you have those things, it's not using those as excuses or allowing them to define you and hold you down, but instead to do the opposite. And I think in that, through these conversations, like this really interesting thing happens. Like we get to this almost this intersection of internal state, inner game, mental well-being, emotional regulation, whatever term you want to use. I kind of like the term inner game or mental health. If you could, you probably could say that, and business and performing at a high level. Right. And how, because I think what I've noticed, and by meeting more and more people here in Austin, more and more people through LinkedIn, is like, man, I haven't met anybody who doesn't have shit going on or hasn't in the past come from like a really dark place or a challenging place. And it's more so about how people choose to view that and using that as fuel and taking it to be like, man, there's a lesson in here for me. Not just a lesson so I can go out and 5x my business, but a lesson for me to learn and grow and evolve as a being, and a human being. And so that's kind of my loose vision, for this, is just to have more conversations around that and, go into the stuff that really makes a difference with living a life that is in alignment and running a successful business. And yeah, it's having a team or a relationship and also taking care of yourself. And when there's so much noise in the world and there's so much shit you could be doing, it's like, how do you put yourself first? And it's going to be different for everybody. So just diving into what that looks like for you, how you think about it, struggles you run into, how you adjust on the fly, etc. So that's kind of just to set the table a little bit. We'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to come up. But dude, I would love to start just by hearing what you do and like how you got into that too. I think you got a pretty cool story.
Man, I'll give you the long version of the story because I think it's worth it for some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So
let's do it.
Let's go back to my childhood. I'm a little chubby kid growing up, and I finally decide I'm 10 years old, I'm going to play football. And where I came from, when you started playing football in junior football league, I know it's Pop Warner, a lot of people call it around the country, whatever. There's a weight limit. I was over the weight limit. I was a very chubby kid. I had to lose weight. I'm 10 years old. My dad starts working out with me, throwing me in hoodies and double sweatpants. And like, I'm going for runs in August and my neighbors are looking at me like, what's wrong with this little kid? Yeah. And long story short, made weight, never missed it, played football. That became what I went on to. Now, I give you that story to start. My work ethic of seeing like, if I do something, I can put my mind to something, go from there, improve, and see a result from it. So everything sparked there. I carried that through football, through high school, through college. And I think that's the foundation of who I am as a person, just going back to like a little chubby kid. Now, with that, I looked up to my dad, and I think it started with moments like those where my dad was a leader. My dad is a leader still to this day. And he didn't just tell me, go run, fatty. Like he put the sweatpants on with me. He put the hoodies on with me in August heat and was running with me as a little kid. So I'm like, I want to be like my dad. And my dad, for a living, he was a doctor. So I said, okay, my dad seems like he has these really good qualities. We have a good life, or he's there for me. He makes good money. We had presents on Christmas. We weren't filthy rich, but it was a good life. So I wanted to be a doctor. Now I'm going to school to be a doctor. I'm playing football at the same time, doing all the things. I realized I was miserable looking forward at what my life was going to become from the standpoint that I had to go to school for 8 years. I did horrible in school my first semester in college, and I was always an A student. But failing those classes, I look back and I was kind of, personally, I think I was subconsciously rejecting the path I was on by failing those classes because I never did bad in school. I mean, I was an A high honor student in high school and I never took a book home. Like that was the type of person that I was. So it just was not me. Anyway, through that, I talked to my dad about it and I have a hard conversation. He supports me thoroughly and he says, look, I don't care what you do. I just want you to do something you want to do and I want you to do something that's going to bring you a good life. So I said, okay, so what's the next step? He tells me, I'm going to set you up with different people in different careers and you're going to learn about them because you don't know anything about any other careers than medicine. And we need you to learn if you're going to choose.
Yeah.
The second conversation I had was to his advisor, who is my mentor and now one of my partners. His name is Timmy. So I talked to Timmy, and I'll distill that conversation down to this. Timmy said to me, there's 3 things we all think about before we go to sleep. Number 1, did I hurt anybody today? And if you did, you can pray about it. If you're religious, you can do whatever you need to do to make your mind right. Talk to a friend, talk to a family member, whatever it is to make your mind right if you did hurt someone. The second thing, am I healthy? Are my friends healthy? Is my family healthy? If anyone isn't or you're not, you call your doctor, you get a prescription, or you get whatever thing you need to make yourself feel better at a general level. And he looked at me, or he said to me, it was a phone call. He said to me on the phone, he goes, and he always calls me kid. He said, kid, that's your dad. He's the second thing people think about. And he said, the third thing people think about just before they go to bed, just before they shut their eyes, am I making the right financial decisions to put myself on the path that I want to be on moving forward? And in some people's situation, can I pay that bill tomorrow? Am I going to be okay? Is someone coming to knock on my door to evict me from my apartment at some level for some people? And he said, that's the third thing people think about. That's who I am, talking about himself. And he said, that's who you could be for people. You could help people just like your dad does, but in a different way. And when I heard that story, that's what made me want to get into financial advice and to get more into what I actually do now for anyone listening. I'm a financial planner, and really the work we do is big time centered around what someone's vision is and reverse engineering from that to where their financial situation is today, and just reworking like little things, not even little things. There's little things, there's big things. How do we tweak that so that we could be on a better path to your vision and better position yourself for what you want?
I have a follow-up to that, but really quickly, I just want to share my story with Pop Warner really quick. So I was a really skinny kid growing up, and I was not super strong. And so but I was right on there's one year I was right on the weight limit, like right on the edge. Right. And I wanted to play down. Right. So I was like one of the bigger kids because I wasn't like, I was just like bones pretty much. And so I was actually drinking things like Slim Fast and like running on the treadmill to try and like I actually had to lose a couple pounds. I remember my mom talks about it now. She's like, yeah, people would think like must have thought I was just crazy for allowing you to drink Slim Fast and like try and lose weight to make it. So anyway, it's so funny you bring that up because I was super dedicated and really committed to doing that too. And I also tie back a lot of the same traits to those days and early on with sports.
Dude, everything in my life, like it's so funny because you just think of a little chubby kid like trying to lose weight for junior football. But I swear to God, I would say with every ounce of me that any success I had, I can correlate back in some way to junior football.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, you're learning. I mean, you're really learning. Of course, you could go about it different ways, and there could be negative influences. With sounds like you had a very supportive environment, and obviously your dad was like right there next to you too. But you can see how those experiences and like learning how, hey, this is what we got to do. If this is something you really want to play football, to go after, like it's going to take some work. And let's show up and put in that work every day. And how old are you then? Do you remember ish?
I was 10, man.
10.
I was 10.
Yeah. So like really instilling, some, some characteristics and some traits early on. So that's rad.
You grow up. Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing to close the loop on that, you grow up fast because when you're a 10-year-old, nothing in your life is serious. And then all of a sudden you have this serious thing of like, if I don't lose 20 pounds in the next month and a half because I'm a little fat kid that can't make weight, like I can't play football and now I won't be able to do things with my friends. And then that carries over. So anyway.
Yeah, I love that. And that can go on or ties into something we can chat about later, but is like, and it's just so present for me because it's something I hear all the time, but is the power of willpower and the power of choice, and this is really prevalent with a lot of my clients, and I'm sure a lot of your clients too, right? But it is learning the skill of not being victim of circumstance and making a decision to live in a way that is in alignment with the best version of you and really what you want, right? Even if it's hard. because it's gonna
Yeah.
be.
Here's the thing, and this is what I come back to. Every single time I'm faced with something difficult, whether it's personally, professionally, financially, anything, we have a situation in front of us. The situation might suck. You might be unlucky. No matter what's going on, it's just the odds are completely against you. Whatever outlook you take, whatever direction you take, it's like, okay, so what? So, for example, I'm driving on the highway, my car breaks down, I'm on the side of the highway. I mean, I could just cry and be a victim and complain that my car breaks down, I'm on the side of the highway,
Yeah.
or I could keep my cool, move forward and do what I can do and just control the controllables. But it's such a simple concept, but I think for whatever reason, a lot of people struggle to grasp that in practice, and they'll take a crappy circumstance and just say like, okay, this is just my excuse to not put effort into something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually really, it's incredibly disempowering to put your internal state, you know, how you're responding or reacting into the hands of what's going on around you. Right. And I think to your point, it's recognizing that, hey, what has happened is just happened. And how I think about it is, you know, either way, you got to face this circumstance right here. Either way, you got to do it. You have a problem, a challenge. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's rainy. It's too dry. Somebody cut me off, whatever it is. There's plenty of things where if you find the right crowd, people will sympathize with you, you know, and feed into it. Okay. But it's more about how do you actually want to feel? How do you want to show up? Do you want to allow these things outside of you to have power over how you're showing up and how you're feeling every day? Right? Or in
This
the
might be
moment.
controversial, but I think another point off it, Tim, is let's just take the presidential election.
Yeah.
People will be on Facebook and social media arguing about who they want to be president and blame why they can't buy a home on who gets elected as president in November. And it's like, if you're that close to being able to afford a home or whatever your goal is, that who gets elected as a politician matters to that goal. There's so many more issues that need to be solved below the surface. It's not even funny. And that's where like people will just say like they're a plastic bag and they let the world dictate how their life is lived.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something I think very, you know, when it comes down to what we really want at our core, it's really straightforward. You know, it's we want to be loved and accepted, right? Loved and accepted. And for some people, the way that they find that inclusion to be a part of something is to find an enemy, right? And that is not done consciously. It's part of our primal wiring. Like we have this mechanism that is our mind, our ego, right? I call it our survival mind with the guys I work with, just so we can think about it in a certain way. And when left on autopilot, it's based in survival. It's based in threats, right? So it is looking for all potential threats, you know, areas to feel like it can blame, right? Areas where it basically looks out and is like, it has this most amazing quality where it would rather be right and righteous than it would be free. So this person, this hypothetical person that you're describing would rather be right about their inability to buy a house than to truly be free in their experience as a being, as a human, and figure out ways to do things or to have things like financial freedom, right? Or looking at their like their role in the whole thing. That's for a whole different topic.
Yeah.
I want to come back to what you were sharing and talking about what you're doing. Tell me about who you're working with. Like who are we'll just start there. Who are your main clients?
So this is interesting because I've seen a trend with who I work with over the last year. Not change, but a trend within my client base. So I'll give the context. My wheelhouse is sales executives, people that are working for startups all the way up to big publicly traded companies. They're selling, they have variable compensation. There might be some stock things going on there. A lot of them want to do one of two things or both. And this is the trend I've been noticing.
Yeah.
Get in real estate because they want to have passive income and start relying less on the sales income, But number two, start a business of their own. I have 5 different clients over the past year that left their W-2 and started their own thing, whether they're solopreneurs or like I was on with one of my clients this morning and they bought a company and he has 2 partners and they have 3 employees and they're going that direction. And he didn't totally leave his W-2, but he's transitioning slowly. So
yeah, wow.
I think if I was going to distill it down, sales executives and business owners that are either solo business owners or they have a couple employees. I don't really work with big businesses, but there's a lot of overlap. Those 2 groups are really my wheelhouse of what I've seen the most and get the most.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest thing that people struggle with when you first start working with them? Or it may be even not the ones you work with, just even in initial conversations. What is like the real biggest thing that people struggle with?
This is with people I work with, and I could almost guarantee to you this is for every person out there who has any level of financial struggles, or honestly, any person out there in general. Most people can go online, do some research, make a really good one-off decision financially. Like almost everybody can use Google, ChatGPT, CNBC, Market Watch, whatever, make a good decision, do your research on taxes, investments, anything.
Yeah.
What people struggle to do is know, how do I take these 10 micro decisions I've made in my finances? Maybe there's 2 other big ones over here. How do I get these working together as a cohesive unit with perspective on where I'm going? Because, and what I mean by that, Tim, when I see situations 9 out of 10 times, I see, let's say you had a guy standing in the middle of a field, and this is going to be a stupid analogy, but it'll make the point make sense. I have a guy standing in the middle of a field. I have 10 ropes tied to him around his waist, and they're all in different directions. And now you have 10 people standing around him in a circle. They're all equal strength, and they're all pulling on the ropes. Well, that guy's just going to be standing in the middle of this field. He's not going to go in any direction. And that's what I see people's financial pictures looking like. They have these 10 decisions or 10 things going on that are all good micro decisions, but they're not serving what their vision is. They're not putting them in the direction they want. And just because you see something online that's good doesn't mean that it's good for you. So in general, that's what I see the most.
Interesting. Do you think that people have a vision? Like have they articulated it? Have they written down, like when you're meeting with people and you go, hey, what's your 5? And I share this because, you know, I would have maybe a loose financial goal, or I have a vague idea of, which I'm sure you hear this term a lot, of like financially independent, right? Or something that is so fucking vague. So I'm curious, like when you start working with people, do you find that people have clear goals and clear targets?
Usually not. There's usually 1 or 2. I mean, most people, when I ask it, they'll be like, well, I want to retire one day. And I'm like, okay, well, like sweet. not who cares, but I challenge them and I'll say, okay, I get that, but let's go 5 years in the future and look back. And now you're 5 years in the future. Life is there. What are you doing? Where are you living? Who are you with? Yeah. And most people have never thought about that, which is tough, because if I've never thought about where I want to go, how could I possibly get there?
Right. Well, that's what was coming up for me. And it's so interesting. This is like one of the biggest things I see with the guys that I work with too, is there are these maybe loose ideas, very vague ideas, but there is a bit of pain of taking time to get clear on what you want. It's almost like, you know, people are afraid to declare what they want. And I think there may be some self-worth, you know, some things that are not being enough, that just ties into kind of our, you know, some of our nature, just in our egoic nature as being human beings. That's really based in a lot of insecurity and lack and whatnot. But I found that and that's what I was just thinking with your example with, you know, 10 things pulling you in a different direction. It's like, you can make decisions, you know, one off and here and over there. But if they're not in alignment with really where you're headed from the top down, how are they ever going to get you to where you want to go? Right. And so one of the first things we always do is talk about, hey, what does this ideal state look like, and get very descriptive, and imaginative, and like really visualize it so you can allow yourself to declare it and start working backwards from there. So for you, like at what point, how are you working with people to get that clarity?
Yeah, so we really push people whenever we meet with someone, and typically like the clients that I'm leading the relationship with, I'm having two calls with them before we start working together, and they're paying us and actually working with us. And I'm asking a lot of these things in the first call to stretch their vision, understand what they want. But then once they're working with the team, we do 2 meetings before we get to the point where we're actually going to advise and make recommendations. The first one is more so like just data, but it also comes up again, like, what are we working towards? What's the goal? And then our second session is really, really hyper focused on being intentional for time on like, what is something. And my partner, Michelle, she'll ask this question. She'll literally say, what is something that's really important to you that you haven't said to Mando, or you haven't said to Aggie, who is another one of my partners? But she'll ask that question. And I tell our clients up front, I'm like, look, it's going to feel repetitive as anything when you meet with us, our first 3 meetings. But the reality is that we need to spend a lot of time and be really intentional about what you want, because you just met us a month ago. You just started working with us a month ago. And not only that, if they never thought about these things, this is the first month they've ever spent dedicated time looking out. So it's not necessarily a thing of like, have 3 meetings that's the purpose, but we're asking these questions constantly. And even with the people we're working with, we try to make sure we touch back on this at least once a year.
Yeah. Maybe what I'm trying to get at is like, what are some common beliefs or thoughts, or maybe even fears around money that you see with the people you work with?
The biggest fear is that I've seen people who have much more than they need just think that it's going to collapse out from under them any day. That's probably the most common that I see. Like, you can be someone where you have $6,000 a month of expenses and $80,000 in the bank, and you think like you're going to go bankrupt the next day. And I've literally had people in similar situations to that express those words to me being dead serious. And at first, years ago, when I'd first encountered this, I'm like, how does this make any sense? Like, can't this person see it? But then I realized it goes back to the lack of clarity, Tim. The person that'll say those things and fears that, which I think is a lot of people, it's because they don't know where they're going and they don't know what the decisions they're making are yielding them. So because they don't know those things, it leads to a lot of uncertainty in the now. So you cling to everything. You get really scarcity minded about where your money is now, what you have now. And it leads to this place of lack and fear around money in general.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It just makes me, think like so many things in life. We feel like we make decisions logically, right? But we really make them emotionally, and we react to these things like it's all just an emotional reaction. So it comes back, like I think about, there may not be clarity on long-term, or like on their long-term plan, but it just fascinates me to be like, what is this person's relationship with money? And where does this come from? How do they view money? Do they view it as a finite resource? Do they view it as something they're like grasping? It's because it sounds like, hey, I don't want to let go of this. I see it all the time in initial consultations I have with guys, where we can have these 1.5 hour long calls and talking about the changes they want to make, and whether they're burnt out or they're not present at home with their partner or their kids, or their health is out of whack. And they kind of maybe have this big vision where they want to get to, and they want to launch this business and how much better life will be. And then when it comes to potentially investing, it is like this wall comes up, and I just see this veil of fear. And it's like the idea of parting ways with any money, right? For something like, like that, it really pulls this primal reaction out of them, that they just want to hang on to it. Right. And
it's a big mindset shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big shift to view it as a tool rather than like this expendable, just scarce resource. So usually from the first time I start working with people, before they even work with us, I start to try to like condition people to understand like, okay, you're using your money, but what are you getting back? You're using your money, but what are you getting back? And that's if you're paying for my service, if you're putting it into your own health, if you're investing in things there. It's a tough mindset shift, but once you get the evidence from doing it, that's when I think the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, amazing, man. What do you, like, when you're waking up every day, I'm curious, like, what inspires you to keep doing this? Keep doing the work you're doing, expanding your team, growing your business?
I didn't think we were going to go here, but this might be a little dark, but it's okay. Throughout my life growing up, I would say my relationship with death was very bad. Like I was like very much scared of dying and whatnot. And like I said, we're getting deep with this one, but as I've grown older and really in the last, I'd say like 3 years or so, I've gotten really comfortable with the idea of death, and like not in a morbid way or gross way, but just the fact that I will die one day, whether I'm 80, 100, 120, who knows the way medicine's going nowadays, but I know I will die. And because I know I will die, I want my life to mean something. And because I want my life to mean something, I really look at the general population of the world and think that most people live a cookie cutter, very similar life, which is fine for a lot of people. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that because many of those people are very happy. Yeah. But because of the relationship I have with death and how I've kind of grasped it and thought about it in a more healthy way, I want to do something that's not normal. I don't want the same as 7 billion people or however many people is in the world now. I don't even know how much, but I want to do extraordinary things. I want to impact people. I want to be someone who people look at and say, like, he's doing things different. So when I wake up every single morning, my alarm is, and it's been labeled this for a few years now, my alarm is labeled, what life did you sign up for? So when that goes off at 4:45 or 5:30, whatever time I set it for that day, I'm reading that every morning. And it actually comes back to something we talked about earlier, Tim. Our circumstances are one thing, but life comes down to choices no matter what's thrown in front of you, whether it's hot weather, cold weather, bad circumstances, bad luck, good luck. The choice you make is the life you're signing up for, whether you care or not, irrespective of circumstances. So when I wake up, I read that every single morning and I know it's like, hey man, I want to be in shape. I'm going to throw my clothes on, go to the gym, drink some water, get after it, have a good breakfast, and get into what I need to do today because that's the life I want to sign up for.
Yeah. You know, I love that. And I have something really similar, a really similar question that I pose to myself and to clients and stuff, but it's what game are you playing? You know, are you playing the game of accumulation and acquiring and hoping like hell that you don't lose all the money that you've invested with Mando? You know, are you playing the game of sacrificing time with your family right now so you can go earn more and you say like, oh, I'm a provider. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, are you acutely aware of the game that you're playing in the trade-offs, you know, and what you're giving up right now for potentially something in the future, right? And really how that's impacting your moment-to-moment experience of life. So yeah, I love that question. But what'd you say like, what was the life that you signed up for?
What life did you sign up for? Every single morning. I made it my alarm because I'm just like, I want to force myself to think about that every day when I wake up. Because that's going to impact the decisions I make as a person. Because at the end of the day, my vision, my life I want that I focus on and I articulate to myself, every choice I make is either pushing me closer to that or further from it.
Yeah. Well, I love that, you know, that you shared that about how you view it every single day. And, you know, I've really been thinking a lot about in recent months, just the stat that only 3% of people write down their goals, right? There may be a higher percent that have goals, only 3% write them down, and a much smaller percent actually look at them regularly. And I just had an amazing conversation with Marcus Chan, who is a Fortune 500 sales director and now has his own sales consulting company. And his process of visualization and getting clear on goals and reviewing them every day. And he made instead of a vision board like I've made that I look at often, you know, he actually made a 9-minute like montage video for his vision with like his own voiceover and like what he's going after and why he's doing it. And it was just a great idea to be reinforced, right? That the things that we want in life and how we want to show up and the person we want to become, man, it's not going to happen by accident. Like, and so I love that you have it front and center every single day, right? Every single day to look at and remind you, because it's that important to you. So on to piggyback off of that, what are some other things that are part of your, what I love to call like your practice, right? And when I think of practice, physical, mental, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, like things that you've curated within your day, week, month to really bring out this best version of you.
So you mentioned vision board. Like, I'm sitting at my desk here. Over there, I could see I have my vision board. I update that every single year at a minimum. And I mean, it's been for the last 3 years, so it's not like I'm going on a decade, but I update that. That's something that's important to me. And I think seeing like what you want to become is important too. Another thing, you go back to 3% of people write their goals down. There was a study that I heard about in 2022 from Dr. Kevin Elko. I don't know if you ever heard of him or know who he is, but I heard a speech by him. He was speaking at an event I was at, and something along the lines of like 3% of the people that wrote their goals down, so many of them never looked at them again. So many of them looked at it every day. So many of them wrote down the top 3 goals every day or whatever it was. And the people that wrote them down repetitively, daily or weekly or monthly, they got to, now it was based on income, and income is not everything, but I think it's a good proxy for the example. They made like 10 times the amount of money as the person that just wrote their goals down one time. So when I heard that, I equated it back to, well, whether it's income or whether it's a state of feeling or something I want in my life, that all applies. So another thing in practice that I do is I carry a ton of legal pads in my house. I have them in my desk, in my bag. And whenever I feel anxiety about what I'm doing and where I'm going, or I'm unsure, I'll just start writing out, hey, here's what I want. Here's who I want to be. This is the type of person I want to be. So that's another big thing that I do that really, really helps. And I think a simple one is like the gym, like just working out consistently keeps my mind in the right place, obviously keeps me fit, and eating healthy 80 to 90% of the time. I mean, I drink on occasion. I'll eat some ice cream once in a while, but 85% of the time I'm eating right. 85% of the time I'm eating high protein and veggies and stuff like that. And I think that's important because when you kind of, you take the break, it doesn't hurt you as much.
Yeah.
So those are a couple things, man. Is that like, what, could I expand on anything there? Is there anything more you're looking for with that?
No, I think that's a great, great outline, a great way to think about it. It doesn't have to be these crazy complex, routines or morning or whatever. It's like, man, it's about the fundamentals, just having a legal pad with you. So if something comes up, you're just open to, hey, let me flush this, man. I don't want to hold on to this. Let me just flush. Let me gain some clarities. There it is, and just having I love the 80, 90% rule. Mine's pretty much the same thing, and it just allows you to live with more freedom, more easy. Like you let the system do the heavy lifting, right? You have the big rocks for you that, hey, when I do these things, I show up, I feel my best, right? And now you're starting to create this momentum, like this freight train that can take a while to get going. But now once it's going, you don't have to do too much to maintain it, right? What do you feel like, if there is something that you struggle with most, or either from maybe an impact level or just something that pops up often for you?
It goes back to my addictive personality because it's my biggest strength. And I think addictive has a bad connotation to it, which it is a weakness for me in a way, but it's my biggest strength, but it's also my biggest weakness because I go through periods where I will just want to work and work and work and work and work. And I struggle and have pushed myself to burnout multiple times.
Yeah.
One thing that I've done as a result of that is hire an EQ coach. Her name's Alia, and I meet with her like quarterly now. We don't meet like every month, but when we first started working together 2 years ago, it was like every other week we would talk for a good 3 months initially, and then now we do quarterly calls. But working with her really helped me understand the deep-rooted things of myself to kind of avoid that burnout and handle it better. But even still, even with that work, I think it's still something that I can go too much in one direction for better or worse. Because even on the relaxation side, like when I want to be off, it can be tough for me to get back in the groove. And I think from the outside looking in, people look at me sometimes and they tell me, you're so disciplined, you work so hard. And I'm like, man, am I? Like, I don't know. Like it's just as hard for me to wake up and go to the gym as it is for you. It's just as hard for me to come back from a vacation and work the next day. And I might not be on my A game the day after a vacation, or maybe for the next 2 days. So I think my biggest weakness is that I'll push myself too much in either direction.
Yeah, I feel that. I love that point too about it still being hard, right? I think that's a misconception with, with people who are like, man, if I just need the motivation, or if I have the willpower. It's like, no, dude, it's still going to suck. It's still going to be hard. And it's more cultivating the decision-making muscle to do it anyway, and really lean into it and be like, I know, again, it goes back to having that North Star, to having the alignment. And to knowing that like your perspective on life and what you're asking yourself to look at every single day. And it's, how am I playing? Or what game am I playing? What life am I choosing to live today? Okay, well, if that's really important to you, what is the most important thing? Is it to get up early and go to the gym, or is it to sleep in? The decision's really straightforward when you think about it. Right? And you know how the impact of either is going to have on you. Right. And so I think that's just such a great point. I wanted to ask, with your EQ coach, what were some of the things that made a big impact on you? What were some of the things that just made a big difference in how you were growing your own EQ and really being able to emotionally regulate?
I'm driven by external recognition. Yeah. Is the way I want to put that. I've always kind of known it. I've rejected that because of my own ego for many years of my life, thinking, oh, I don't care what other people think of me. I'm doing what I do because I want to do it. No. Yeah. Through sports, as I got into my career early, as I do stuff on social media, I know that when I get the pat on the back, it makes me feel good. Yeah. And I think I didn't accept that in the past because I thought that's a bad thing. What I worked with Alia's her name, she helped me recognize that I wanted success so bad, quote unquote success, as me and her defined it, which is the benchmark you hit that people look at you and say, look what he did. That's so awesome. Like he did X, Y, Z. But what I really needed to focus on was excellence. And excellence, this is kind of becoming a common theme of our conversation today. Excellence is the choices you make every day, the person you become, what your habits are, and what you control in your life. That's excellence. You do everything you know you should be doing. You have excellence. You're good. You might not get success, quote unquote, but you're going to be good in your own mind. So it's very simple, but this was something that she helped me uncover to really understand the way that I think more and carry into my life now, that it drove a lot of anxiety in me, Tim. I mean, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I put so much pressure on myself to the point of like, just, I don't want to say paralysis, but for lack of a better way to put it, paralysis. Yeah. And it's helped me get out of that state to just understand why I think the way I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think like what I pick up from it too is success is something that is future based. It's just an idea, right? It's so subjective. There's no, like, the rubric for it doesn't exist. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? And so that's why it's so hard to get, because it will constantly change and shift its shapes. And so as you get closer to it, what happens is like the goalposts move. Always, right? And because success is something that is made up, it's something we look forward to, that is going to cause anxiety, because it's creating this state where you're just looking forward and you're not actually being present in the only place you can live, the only place that exists, which is right now. And so the shift to excellence, what I what I'm picking up from it is what it does is it allows you to actually focus on what's in front of you. And it allows you to be present because by definition, excellence is what the choice you're making is right now and how you're choosing to show up in this moment. And that, the byproduct of that is anxiety. Just, if you're not focusing on some event in the future that may or may not happen, anxiety doesn't really have anything to stand on, and it allows you to be more present. So I love that, just that subtle shift. And I'm sure it shows up, right? I'm sure it has its way of coming back. And when it does do that, because I know it does, because I know how this stuff feels and how it works, what are ways that you recenter and realign? How do you do that?
You might laugh, and fully so, at this answer, but two ways.
Dude, I've tried so much weird shit in the last few years.
Because of this. Like, the first thing is going back to my vision and writing that out, hence the legal pad thing that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
But most times I just call Alia, like, straight up. I'm like, hey, we need to schedule a call. Like, that's literally what I do. And I'll bring whatever I'm thinking, why I'm thinking it, what's going on in my life that's triggering this. And we dive deeper and we uncover and we try to see, like, okay, well, why? Okay, well, why? Well, what should we do here? And it goes back to that part of just, I think with any coach, whether it's myself, whether it's you, whether it's her, I think there's so much value to the people that you do coaching with to have ongoing relationships with them for that reason, because no matter what problem you're dealing with, you can like be on a better path, you could fix it, but there's always going to be tweaks to make.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I worked with a guy who was not officially a monk, but he'd studied Zen Buddhism for 30 years. And so he was but he just didn't take the vow, right, to be a monk. And one of the lessons among many that he taught us was, behind one door, like as you work through these challenges and you get through a door, like behind one door, there's always another. Behind that one, there's always another. And, that I think just speaks to the nature of this, this incarnation of being a human being right now. Is our path it's really never ending. There's always going to be things that come up. And the more we do the work on one area, it just becomes more subtle. It's just refinement. And, it shows up maybe in different ways that we hadn't been aware of yet because we were working on bigger issues, bigger blocks, more like acute, more prevalent. And then the more we go down the path, it shows up in different ways. It kind of like sneaks around the back and surprises us and wears a mask, and it shows up in all these different ways we weren't quite ready for yet. But the biggest thing I think that I love, about your answer is you don't just bury it and feel like you have to do it on your own and feel like, man, this is, so I shouldn't be dealing with this right now. Man, I had a conversation with Alia already and this is coming back up. Like, I should be good with this by now, right? And instead, like, having the clarity of how you want to show up, in the life that you're choosing to live, and within your, your personal practice, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is having a resource that you can lean on when something comes up and not feeling like I shouldn't have to do this. Not applying that self-judgment and shame or feeling guilt for leaning on someone who knows what they're doing way better than you know. And that's why, like, you work with her. That's why you hire her, right? It's the same reason why people work with you. And I think the more that we can just see our own well-being, especially our inner state, right? Because I think people can feel more okay with that for their physical health and fitness and that level, but more for our inner state. When we have a tough time navigating it, it doesn't mean that we're broken. It doesn't mean that we're less than or anything's wrong. It just means we got to learn how to do it. And leaning on someone like a pro, and someone that knows you and knows what you're going through. Like, I love that. Anyway, I love that answer. I didn't expect that answer, but I thought it was great, man. That's so amazing.
And one more thing on that too, Tim, that I want to get in here. Like, think about how many people have no idea why they think the way they do or why they're motivated typically in one way compared to another way. I had no idea until I started working with her. And I've only learned Well, why am I externally motivated? Typically, if I look back to my childhood, my first foundational memory of like a core thing that made me who I was having to lose weight, get on a scale in front of 15 people, make the weight, and then be told, awesome, you did it, go play the game, and get told good game after the game. Like, one of my first memories is completely dependent on external forces of myself in a way. So it
Yeah.
sounds very simple, but it all started there, and it showed me what quote unquote success was. And
Yeah.
I made weight every time. So I kept seeing the quote unquote success, and I carried that to my life that, well, okay, success is told to me by other people. And it just, it builds up that way. So a lot of inner work to come to terms with that.
Man, I think it's such a great story because, you know, people can relate to it whether they played sports or not, especially people that are high performers that are starting their own business, they're in sales, they have their own, you know, financial planning company, they're CPAs, whatever it is, you know, it's so primal, you know, for us. It's such a primal response to play this if-then game. It's a conditional way that we have learned to get love and acceptance from others. We've learned, you know, because I'm really the same with sports, with getting good grades, you know, with achieving something, with winning a medal, whatever it is what we start to learn as kids is, hey, when I do this, you know, if I play well, if I show up for the game, I do well, I get the big, you know, game-saving tackle, I just, whatever, I perform well, I show up, maybe I work hard. I know that that's going to result in somebody giving me a high five, somebody giving me a hug. You know, maybe me going to get pizza after the game, or like, so you start to see how this reward system gets wired in deeply, and we don't ever consciously examine it and work to redefine how we really want to live. Right? Some people do that. Sure. They're definitely the odd ones out. It's typically done through experiencing things like pain and suffering and things like anxiety and potential burnout, and seeing like, man, what game have I been playing? What life have I been choosing to live every single day? Because fuck, it's exhausting. Every day I wake up and feel like I need to do all this shit so I can ... right? Like, fill it in, it doesn't matter. And so it's this amazing shift of this extrinsic motivation into now being like, wait, why? Why was I putting my worth into the hands of success metrics? How can I instead start to slowly pull it back in? Because it takes a while. It takes time, right? And I don't know if it'll ever fully get there, but instead focusing on things like, how can I just be excellent today? What does that look like? Moment to moment decisions. And what does excellence look like for Mando? This can be different than what it looks like for Tim. And I think that's the clarity piece too. And now you start getting in this state where you have clarity, you have your North Star, and moment to moment, day to day, week to week, you're making decisions that are just in total alignment with the person that you're becoming and the absolute best version of yourself. And that includes facing all the shit and the challenges and the struggles and the things that come up, and you're like, and more and more doors, and you're like, man, I don't know what the heck I need to do. Let me call all of you. Let's work through this shit. And it's just a commitment to continuing to press forward. So that was a great share, man.
Yeah, 100%, man.
What do you think 10-year-old Mando would think about where you're at right now?
What I would say to that is, when I was a little kid, like I said, I was chubby and whatnot. And other little kids tell you about that, right? Like, you're the fat kid and I wasn't even like this morbidly obese kid by any means, but I was a chubby kid and I got called fat and all these things, and kind of carried over into middle school and high school. I finally got in shape, and that led to football and everything like that. But
yeah,
that sticks with you, right? And I have moments I look back on to when I was a kid that I struggled with that. I always knew like I just wanted to do more. I always felt that inside of me. I didn't have the clarity on it, like I articulated earlier with my relationship with death and whatnot, but I always knew I just didn't want to do the same thing as everyone else. And when it came to football, then I would be really serious and like work out really serious and eat healthy and like do all the things. And I would have people that be like, dude, you're not going to the NFL. Like, what do you think you're doing? And that was another source of other people, other kids picking on me in some ways. So I struggled through that because I'd second guess myself, like, I'm doing all the right things, I think. Why am I getting negative feedback externally? Time back into that point of things. Why am I getting that? And I would second guess myself. And then through college, there was even a little bit of that from time to time. It was less of it, but there was still a little bit. And when I got in my career, I started succeeding, carrying these principles over and succeeding in my eyes, right? We all have a different definition. Yeah. But that 10-year-old me, I think, would look and be like, you did right. You were right. And not right in a sense of like, hey, I was right and you're all wrong and look at my revenge. But right in the sense of I trusted in myself. I didn't let other people sway what I could control and what I wanted to do in my life. And man, I'm really happy with how my life's turned out. I mean, I had this yellow brick road to follow and be a doctor like my dad and take his practice over when he retires one day. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go forge my own path. And I'm fortunate because I work with amazing clients now and I have a great business and I get to travel and I do things I want to do. And I'm not independently wealthy yet. I'm not filthy rich, but I'm in my 20s and could do some nice things. And I work with some really great people. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we could ask for sometimes, that you don't need millions of dollars to feel like you're financially free or wealthy, quote unquote. I feel today, if you dropped $100 million in my bank account, would I take like 6, 7, 8 meetings in a day? Probably not. But I probably still do some meetings and be a financial planner at some level just because I enjoy doing this, and I'd still do the other things because the money gets boring at some point. So a little bit of a tangent, but to say that I think 10-year-old me would be really happy how things turned out.
Yeah, man. I think the big thing with that really stood out is the recognition that you were right to listen to your gut and to follow that voice within. And I think if there's one thing I would tell anybody, give advice to every single person on earth, it's to start cultivating your ability to connect with that voice within and to pay attention to it and to listen to it, because you can't go wrong when you listen to that voice, regardless of what happens. Like following that voice, I've just found time and time again, like, yeah, maybe objective or something on the surface doesn't work out. Maybe I try and launch something, it doesn't work out, but it always seems to be like the perfect stepping stone to the thing that I really needed to get to or to bring into my life. And when I was in a state where I wasn't listening to that voice and I was trying to do everything based off culture and society and what other people were saying was success, and this just conjured up picture of where I, for some reason, thought I needed to be at a certain age with whatever, with a car and a wife and a house. And I'm sure you just hear it absolutely all the time, right? Whenever I listen to that voice, things don't go real well. But it's by tuning in constantly and listening to like the real you that all it's trying to do is guide you, right?
And last thing on that, Tim, because I know we're coming up on time, but I want to make this point. Like, I think about, okay, it's a Friday night. I have my fiance who we're getting married next year. And maybe we go out once every couple of weeks on a Friday night and get dinner. If we had, back to the $100 million example, if we had $100 million in the bank, we'd still be going to the same restaurant on Friday night that we go to now. And if that doesn't tell you, like, step back from the how much money should you have and what car should you drive and what house should you have. Man, I've talked to people who have tens of millions of dollars, and I promise you that I get the statement that the money did not do what they thought it would more often than you would think. And maybe not more often than you would think, but more often than the average person would think. And that's why I just have so much conviction behind, like, yes, secure your financial future. Yes, be responsible. Yes, invest. Yes, do these things. But don't let that stuff paralyze you in what your life is today, because we could be here today and gone tomorrow, and you need to be happy with where you are right now.
I love it, man. Thank you so much, dude. I feel like that's a great way to end it, a great message to end on. Tell us, where can people learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Mando Sallavanti III, and on Instagram now. So Money with Mando on Instagram. You can connect with me there.
Dang, blowing up the spot on Instagram?
Slowly. We just got there. We're small still, but we'll see how it goes, man. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, awesome, brother. Man, thank you so much. It was awesome.
Dude, thank you. Thank you.